A young nurse donated her kidney unaware. Her patient was a lonely millionaire CEO. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Today's story is titled, A Young Nurse Donated Her Kidney Unaware. Her patient was a lonely millionaire CEO. Now, let's return to our main character. The fluorescent lights of St. Vincent Hospital hummed softly above the sterile white corridor. It was nearly midnight, and the world outside was asleep. But inside the operating wing, a young nurse named Anna Monroe stood still, her gloved hands trembling slightly as she stared at the consent form before her. "You don't have to do this, doctor," Harris murmured, his voice low but firm. Anna looked up, her brown eyes clear despite the exhaustion lining her face. "If I can save a life, then I have to," she said quietly. She'd signed hundreds of forms in her career shift reports, dosage charts, emergency logs, but this one was different. This one meant she would go under the knife herself. She had volunteered to donate her kidney to a patient who had been on the transplant list for months. The file simply said, male, 35, critical. She didn't know his name. She didn't ask. For Anna, compassion didn't need details. The faint beeping of monitors echoed down the hall as she was wheeled toward the operating room. Her mind drifted not to fear, but to a memory. A sterile room years ago. A small girl on a hospital bed herself, waking from a transplant that had saved her when she was only 9. That day, she had promised to live a life that gave back. Now, she was keeping that promise. Under the harsh light, the surgeon's mask hid his expression, but the nurses whispered in awed or calmness. "Are you sure about this, Miss Monroe?" someone asked. Anna smiled faintly. "I'm sure." The anesthesia began to spread, cool and heavy, and the last thing she saw before her eyes closed was the faint reflection of her hospital bracelet, engraved with her initials, AM, catching the light. Hours later, the surgery was over. 2 lives intertwined by a single act of selflessness. The recovery was slow, painful even, but Anna never complained. She returned to her small apartment, her stitches hidden beneath the soft fabric of her scrubs, and went back to work as if nothing had happened. No one at the hospital knew the donor's name, not even the patient, and that was exactly how she wanted it. Across the city, a man named Grant Carter lay unconscious in a private suite, a heart monitor tracing a steady, fragile rhythm. A billionaire at 34, CEO of Carter Medical Group, adored by the press yet alone behind glass walls. When he finally opened his eyes days later, no one told him whose kidney now kept him alive. The file said anonymous donor. But somewhere, deep inside, he felt something unfamiliar. An echo of gratitude mixed with a strange calm, as if a piece of someone else's light now lived within him. And for Anna, as she changed IV bags on the night shift and watched patients breathe easier, she never knew that one of them, the man she had saved, was about to change her life forever. 3 weeks later, the scent of antiseptic still lingered in the air as Anna pushed her cart of supplies down the quiet corridor of St. Vincent Hospital. The night shift was always her favorite, when the world outside faded into darkness and all that remained was the soft rhythm of monitors and the quiet hum of machines keeping people alive. She moved with care, adjusting IV lines, checking vitals, whispering small comforts to patients who would not remember her face by morning. To most of them, she was just another nurse. But to one man, hidden behind the glass doors of the private recovery wing, she was unknowingly much more. Grant Carter had been transferred there 2 weeks ago, after the transplant that saved his life. The tabloids had not stopped speculating about his miraculous recovery, but Grant ignored them all. His body healed, yet his mind felt strangely empty, as if he had been given a second chance without understanding why. Every morning he stared at the sunlight filtering through the blinds and wondered who had saved him. The file said anonymous donor, but he could not shake the feeling that it mattered. He owed his life to someone whose name he might never know. That thought stayed with him through every board meeting, every sterile press conference where people congratulated him for surviving. He smiled politely, but his heart stayed silent. One evening, restless and tired of the walls closing in, he asked his assistant to drive him back to St. Vincent. He said it was for a donation meeting, but the truth was simpler. He wanted to see the place where his life had been returned. The hospital looked smaller than he remembered, colder. The automatic doors whooshed open, and the smell of disinfectant hit him like memory. In the pediatric wing, laughter echoed faintly, and that was when he saw her. Anna was kneeling beside a young patient, adjusting a teddy bear's bow tie, and smiling with the kind of warmth that did not belong in sterile halls. Her hair was tied loosely, a few strands falling over her cheek, her scrubs faded from long hours. There was something calm, unassuming, and utterly real about her. Grant stood at the doorway longer than he should have, listening to her soft voice as she told the child that heroes came in all shapes and sizes, sometimes even wearing scrubs. When she turned, their eyes met for a brief moment. She gave a polite nod, the kind nurses gave to every visitor, and went back to work. He left soon after, but her image lingered in his mind. The next morning, he called the hospital administration and asked about the nurse in pediatrics named Anna Monroe. "One of our best," they said proudly. "Selfless, never misses a shift." That word selfless echoed. He decided to fund a small charitable program for nurses in her department. Nothing grand, just quiet support. Anna did not know who had approved the grant, but she smiled when the notice came through. Finally, something good for the team, she told her colleague. Her body still carried faint soreness from surgery, but she never let it slow her down. That night, she sat in the hospital garden, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup, unaware that across town, the man whose heartbeat matched her own was thinking of the same stars above the city skyline. Somewhere between them, an invisible thread had already begun to pull tighter, drawing two lives toward the moment when truth would no longer stay hidden. The next week arrived quietly, bringing with it the scent of rain and the soft hum of hospital life. Anna was restocking supplies in the pediatric wing when a message came from the administration office. The Carter Foundation, one of the country's leading medical charities, was partnering with St. Vincent Hospital to launch a new outreach program for underprivileged patients. The program needed a coordinator, and her name had been specifically requested. She blinked at the email, thinking it must have been a mistake. Her supervisor assured her it was not. "They asked for you by name, Anna. Apparently, someone noticed your dedication." Anna's first instinct was gratitude, quickly followed by hesitation. She had never been chosen for anything like this before. She pressed her badge against her chest and whispered, "Maybe this is a way to give back even more." That afternoon, as she walked into the conference room, she froze. Sitting at the end of the long table was Grant Carter. He was nothing like she had imagined. Gone was the frail patient she had seen in the headlines. In his place sat a man with quiet authority, a presence that seemed to fill the room without effort. His dark suit was immaculate, but his eyes held something softer, almost searching. When their gazes met, she felt a flicker of recognition she could not place. Grant stood, extending a hand. "Miss Monroe, thank you for joining us. I have heard you are the heart of this hospital." She hesitated before shaking his hand, her pulse quickening. "That cannot be true," she said softly. "The heart of this hospital is the people we care for." He smiled, the kind of smile that felt genuine, not practiced. "Maybe so, but without people like you, none of this works." The meeting continued, but Grant found his attention drifting toward her calm confidence, the way she spoke with empathy rather than ambition. She was not impressed by wealth or status, only by impact. After the meeting, as others left, he lingered by the doorway. "Would you walk with me, Miss Monroe?" The hallway was quiet except for the distant echo of wheels rolling across linoleum. "You have been here long?" he asked. "Almost 4 years?" she replied. "Long enough to know every squeaky floorboard and every patient who cannot sleep." He chuckled softly. "That sounds like more than dedication." "It is survival," she said, smiling faintly. "Helping others helps me forget my own pain." He paused, curious. "Your own pain?" She glanced at the window, the city lights flickering beyond. "We all have something, Mr. Carter. Some of us just find better ways to live with it." That line stayed with him long after she walked away. For the first time in years, Grant felt something he had not expected: peace. Over the next few weeks, they worked side by side on the Foundation's pilot program. Anna's compassion balanced his precision. Her laughter softened his boardroom tone. Nurses whispered about how the CEO seemed almost human around her. One evening, while reviewing donation records, she found a sealed envelope addressed to her. Inside was a simple thank you card and a small silver pin engraved with the words, "One life more," no signature. Just a note, For the one who never stops giving. She smiled, thinking it was from the hospital director, unaware that Grant himself had written it. That night, as she walked through the garden, the wind carrying the smell of rain and jasmine, she whispered, "Whoever you are, thank you." Across town, Grant stood on his balcony, the same pin in his pocket, unaware she had already received hers. He looked up at the sky and murmured, "Whoever you are, you saved me. I just wish I knew your name." Fate, it seemed, was preparing its quiet reveal. Autumn crept into the city slowly, painting the hospital courtyard in fading golds and soft reds. Anna could feel the change in the air each time she stepped outside between shifts, but inside the hospital, her world remained a steady rhythm of beeping monitors and whispered prayers. The Carter Foundation program had grown faster than anyone expected, and Grant began visiting more often, always under the pretense of checking progress, though everyone noticed the way his gaze sought her across the room. One late afternoon, the pediatric ward was unusually quiet when she saw him standing by the window watching the children's drawings taped to the glass. "You again," she teased lightly, pushing a cart of charts. "I thought CEOs lived in meetings, not hospitals." Grant smiled faintly. "Maybe I am just trying to remember what real purpose looks like." She tilted her head, amused. "And you think you will find it here?" "I already did," he said. But his tone was soft enough that she pretended not to hear. He turned toward the drawings. "You see that one? The castle with the blue flags? A boy named Kevin drew it. He told me he wants to be a builder when he grows up. Said he wants to make safe homes for everyone." Anna smiled warmly. "Then he has more vision than most adults I know." "I think he reminded me of myself when I was his age," Grant admitted. "Before money made everything complicated." His confession hung in the air, honest and unguarded. For a moment, he was not a billionaire or a CEO. He was simply a man remembering who he used to be. "Do you miss it?" she asked quietly. "Before all of this?" "Every day," he said. "But it took almost dying to realize how far I drifted from what mattered." Anna's eyes softened. "Sometimes the hardest lessons are the ones that save us." Their eyes met, and something wordless passed between them. Weeks turned into months. The program flourished under her care, and Grant made excuses to stop by more often, offering to help with fundraising or check equipment. He brought coffee to her desk more than once, insisting it was just coincidence. The nurses smiled behind their masks, pretending not to notice. One evening, after a long shift, she found him waiting near the exit, holding an umbrella. "You will get soaked walking home," he said simply. "Let me drive you." She wanted to refuse, to keep her boundaries clear, but exhaustion won. The rain outside poured in silver sheets as they walked to his car. Inside, the silence was easy, not awkward. "You always take care of everyone," he said softly, eyes on the road. "Who takes care of you?" She chuckled lightly. "Coffee and good intentions." He smiled, then turned serious. "You deserve more than that, Anna." The sound of her name in his voice sent a quiet shiver through her chest. When he dropped her off at her small apartment building, he noticed her pause by the stairs, clutching her bag tighter as if embarrassed by the peeling paint and dim hallway lights. She thanked him politely, but before she could turn away, he said, "You once told me helping others helps you forget your pain. Does it still work?" She hesitated. "Some days, yes. Other days, it just reminds me how fragile we all are." He nodded, understanding more than she knew. "Fragile is not the same as weak," he said gently. She smiled faintly. "You sound like someone who has been both." He laughed softly. "Maybe I have." That night, as she watched the taillights disappear into the rain, she felt something shift inside her, a strange, cautious warmth she had not allowed herself in years. And miles away, Grant sat in his car longer than necessary, rain sliding down the windshield, realizing that for the first time since his surgery, he was not thinking about the mystery donor who saved his life. He was thinking about the nurse who made him want to live it fully. Winter settled in quietly, draping the city in gray skies and the soft chill that seeped through hospital windows. Anna had grown used to seeing Grant around street. Vincent, his visits so frequent that the nurses joked he had become part of the staff. He laughed easily with them, but his eyes always found her, lingering for a heartbeat too long. One evening, near the end of her shift, she found him in the hospital garden, standing beneath a bare oak tree, hands tucked into the pockets of his coat. "You again?" she said with a tired smile, pulling her jacket tighter. "You should start clocking in. At this point, you work more hours here than I do." He smiled faintly. Maybe this place reminds me of what I owe. She tilted her head, curious. Oh? A debt I can never repay, he said softly, his gaze distant. Someone gave me life when I least deserved it. She studied him for a moment, unsure how to respond. You do not strike me as someone who takes gifts lightly. I do not, he said. That is why I am here, trying to make the most of it. There was something in his tone that made her chest tighten, though she could not explain why. The air grew colder, their breath visible in the fading light. Come inside before you freeze, she said, and for a moment his expression softened completely. If you keep rescuing me from the cold, people will start to talk, he teased. She rolled her eyes but smiled all the same. Over the following weeks, their paths intertwined naturally. He invited her to join the Foundation's holiday event, insisting her presence would make it feel less like a fundraiser and more like something real. Anna hesitated, but eventually agreed. The gala was held in the ballroom of the Carter Hotel, a place she had only seen in magazines. As she entered, wearing a simple navy dress borrowed from a friend, she felt out of place among the glittering crowd and polished laughter. But then she saw Grant at the far end of the room, speaking to guests, every inch the confident CEO. When he caught sight of her, his smile shifted warm, genuine, unguarded. He crossed the floor without hesitation. You look beautiful, he said quietly. She blushed, glancing around at the chandeliers and gowns. I think I missed the memo on diamonds. Good, he said. You outshine them anyway. Before she could reply, the host called Grant to the stage. The room fell silent as he began to speak about gratitude, second chances, and the power of compassion. His words felt personal, as though they were meant for her alone. There are people among us, he said, who give without expecting anything in return. They remind us that life is not about what we have, but about what we share. When the applause came, Anna found herself wiping away a tear she had not noticed falling. Afterward, he found her near the exit, away from the noise and champagne. Thank you for coming, he said, his voice low. I do not belong here, she replied softly. Neither do I, he said, and for the first time, she believed him. They stood in silence, the city lights reflecting off the glass doors, two souls bound by something neither could name. When he reached for her hand, she did not pull away. The warmth of his touch was steady, grounding. I do not know why, he murmured, but when you are near, I feel safe. Her heart stuttered, maybe because we both understand what it means to start over. Outside, snow began to fall in slow, gentle flakes, covering the streets in white. Neither of them noticed how the world around them disappeared, leaving only the quiet truth that something deeper had begun. The new year began with quiet mornings and snow melting into gray puddles along the city sidewalks. Life at the hospital returned to its usual rhythm, but for Anna, everything felt slightly different. Grant's presence lingered in her thoughts like a melody she could not forget. She told herself it was just admiration, gratitude for a man who used his wealth for kindness. Yet every time his name appeared in her phone or his voice echoed down the hallway, her pulse betrayed her. Grant, too, felt the shift. He found excuses to visit the hospital under the guise of meetings, often ending up in the cafeteria where Anna had her breaks. One afternoon, he arrived carrying 2 cups of coffee. Do you always forget to eat lunch? He asked. She looked up, surprised. Only on the days ending with Y. He laughed, setting the cup beside her. Then I guess I am just in time. They talked for nearly an hour, about patience, about books, about how she once dreamed of becoming a teacher before nursing took over her life. I think you still are one, he said softly. You just teach people how to fight for tomorrow. The words caught her off guard. You really think that? I know that, he replied. Days turned into weeks, and what started as friendship began to deepen quietly, like roots growing unseen beneath the snow. Their conversations stretched into late evenings. Sometimes he walked her home, always careful to keep a polite distance, always protective. For the first time in years, he felt human again. But fate has a way of testing hearts that dare to heal. One late afternoon, while reviewing documents for the Foundation's upcoming medical awards, Grant came across a confidential file. It was a routine audit of transplant records from Street Vincent. As he skimmed through the data, a familiar set of initials froze him in place. AM donor, AM kidney, compatible with recipient Grant Carter. His breath caught, the bracelet. The one that had fallen from the surgical folder the day he first woke up. He remembered the letters engraved on it, thought it belonged to a nurse. It had belonged to her, Anna Monroe. The truth crashed over him with devastating clarity. The woman who had saved his life, the donor he had prayed to meet, had been by his side all along. Grant leaned back in his chair, emotions warring inside him: gratitude, disbelief, awe, and something deeper, something fragile. He wanted to rush to her immediately, to tell her she was the reason his heart still beat, but he hesitated. What if she never wanted him to know? What if her gift was meant to stay anonymous? He spent the entire night staring at the city skyline from his penthouse, torn between gratitude and guilt. By morning, he knew he could not stay silent. That same day, Anna finished a long shift, unaware of the storm about to come. As she left the ward, she found Grant waiting near the elevator, his expression unreadable. "You look like you have not slept," she said, concerned. He nodded slowly. "There is something I need to tell you." The elevator doors closed behind them, sealing them in quiet. "Anna," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "I know," she frowned. "Know what?" He swallowed hard, his eyes glistening. "About the surgery. About what you did for me." For a heartbeat, the world stopped. The soft hum of the elevator was the only sound. She stepped back, her face pale. "Who told you that?" "I found the record." "I know it was you. You were never supposed to know," she whispered, trembling. "It was never about you owing me anything." "I do not owe you," he said, his voice thick. "I love you." The doors opened, and she turned away, shaken. The hallway stretched before her like a choice she was not ready to make. Behind her, Grant stood motionless, the truth finally spoken, and the silence that followed felt heavier than any words they had ever shared. Anna did not return his calls for days. The revelation had broken something fragile between them, something built not on titles or charity, but on quiet understanding. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the look in his when he said, "I love you." It was not manipulation or pride. It was raw, unguarded truth. And that made it even harder. She spent her nights in the small apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment they had shared. He had found out the one thing she never wanted him to know. Her gift was meant to be anonymous, a simple act of compassion, not a reason for affection or guilt. Meanwhile, Grant carried her silence like a weight he could not put down. His office felt emptier than ever, his success meaningless. The company thrived, the foundation grew, but none of it mattered without the woman whose courage had rewritten his life. He tried to give her space, but every hour without her voice made the city feel colder. Finally, he decided to do something that did not involve wealth, connections, or power, only sincerity. A week later, Anna returned to the hospital for her shift and found whispers waiting for her. "Did you hear?" one nurse said excitedly. "The CEO donated an entire wing to fund free transplants." Anna froze, her heart pounding. She walked down the corridor toward the east side of the hospital, where construction workers were setting up banners. In the middle of the new lobby stood a marble plaque covered with a white cloth. When she arrived, Grant was there, surrounded by doctors, board members, and reporters. Cameras flashed, but he seemed to see only her. "Before we unveil this," he said into the microphone, "I need to tell you why it matters. Months ago, I was given a second chance at life by someone who asked for nothing in return. She reminded me that kindness is the greatest legacy any of us can leave behind. This wing is dedicated to her." He pulled the cloth away, revealing the words engraved in gold. "The Monroe Wing, for A.M., who taught me life is a gift." The room fell silent. Anna's breath caught as tears filled her eyes. She turned to leave, but he stepped off the stage and followed her into the quiet hallway. "Why did you do this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "You promised anonymity." "I did not say your name," he replied softly, "but I could not pretend anymore that your kindness did not shape who I became." She looked away, tears falling freely now. "You did not have to repay me." "I was not repaying you," he said. "I was thanking you. There is a difference." His words hung between them like a heartbeat. "You changed my life, Anna. You gave me a chance to be someone better. I wanted the world to know that people like you exist." She pressed a hand to her chest, torn between pride and pain. "I never wanted credit." "Then do not take credit," he whispered. "Take my gratitude." Her resolve wavered. The anger that had burned in her chest began to fade, replaced by something gentler. "You make everything complicated," she said finally, half laughing through tears. "Maybe," he admitted, "but life was empty before you. Complicated is better." He reached out, hesitant, as if afraid she would vanish. For a long moment she stood frozen, her heart warring between reason and feeling. Then, slowly, she placed her hand in his. No cameras, no applause, just the quiet sound of forgiveness filling the sterile hospital corridor. Outside, the city moved on as if nothing had changed, but for the two of them, everything had. They stood there, surrounded by the faint scent of disinfectant and the soft echo of machines, and for the first time, neither of them felt alone. Spring arrived with sunlight spilling through the glass walls of the new Monroe wing, turning every sterile surface into something warm and alive. Weeks had passed since that quiet moment in the hallway, and though Anna and Grant had begun speaking again, everything between them felt fragile, as if made of glass. He still visited often, bringing small gifts for the children and quiet smiles for her, but he never pushed, never asked for more than what she was ready to give. It was her who struggled the most with the weight of it all. The gratitude, the attention, the way people now whispered her name with admiration. She had never wanted recognition. She only wanted peace. Yet, every time she saw Grant helping a patient, or sitting beside a child who had no family, she could not deny how much he had changed. One evening, the hospital lights flickered against the fading sky as Anna walked through the nearly empty wing. The new plaque gleamed softly under the hallway lamps. She paused to trace her fingers along the engraved letters. For A.M., who taught me life, is a gift. Her chest tightened with emotion. Behind her, a familiar voice said gently, "I hoped you would like it." She turned and saw Grant leaning against the doorframe, his tie loosened, his expression unguarded. "I did not like it," she said quietly. "I loved it." His eyes softened. "Good, because I was terrified you would hate it." They shared a laugh, light and real, and for a moment it felt like the heaviness between them was gone. "You changed this place, Grant," she said. "Not just the building, the people, the energy." "You changed me first," he replied simply. "I just followed your example." He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "You once told me that helping others helps you forget your own pain. Does it still work?" She thought for a moment, then nodded. "Sometimes, but now I think, maybe we are not supposed to forget. Maybe we are meant to heal instead." He smiled. "Then let us heal together." Before she could respond, the intercom crackled overhead, announcing a code blue in the emergency wing. Without hesitation, Anna grabbed her badge and ran, Grant following behind her. When they reached the ER, chaos filled the room. A young boy was being wheeled in after a car accident, unconscious and barely breathing. Anna took charge instantly, her voice steady, her movements precise. Suction ready. 4 in. Heart monitor on. Grant watched in awe as she moved through the storm with grace, her focus unbreakable. After what felt like hours, the boy's heartbeat stabilized. The room exhaled as if collectively relieved. When it was finally over, Anna stepped outside, leaning against the wall, her hands trembling slightly. Grant approached quietly, offering her a bottle of water. "You saved another life," he said. She smiled weakly. "No, the team did. I just kept my promise." "What promise?" "To never waste the life someone gave me," she said softly. Grant looked at her then, truly seeing her the strength, the selflessness, the courage that had drawn him in from the beginning. He wanted to tell her how proud he was, how much she inspired him, but words felt too small for what he felt. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I was going to wait," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "But after what I saw tonight, I cannot. Anna Monroe, you gave me life once. Will you let me spend the rest of it giving back to you?" Her breath caught, eyes glistening. "Grant." He opened the box to reveal a simple ring, elegant and understated, just like her. The hum of the hospital faded until all she could hear was the beating of her own heart. For a long moment she said nothing, tears streaming down her cheeks, and then she whispered, "Yes." In that sterile corridor filled with the scent of antiseptic and hope, the nurse who had given life and the man who had received it finally found something worth living for each other. The seasons turned again, and with them came the gentle hum of life moving forward. The Monroe wing had been open for almost a year, and in that time, hundreds of patients had received care they could never have afforded before. Each wall carried stories of healing, hope, and new beginnings. And in the middle of it all, Anna and Grant stood side by side, partners not just in work, but in purpose and love. Their wedding had been simple, just as she wanted it, held in the hospital's rooftop garden, surrounded by the doctors, nurses, and patients who had become their extended family. The evening sun poured golden light over the city skyline as Anna walked down the aisle in a modest ivory dress, her heart pounding not from nerves but from gratitude. Grant stood waiting, not the billionaire in a designer suit, but a man humbled by love, wearing the same smile that had carried him through every hardship since the day she saved his life. When she reached him, he whispered, "You are the reason I believe in miracles." She smiled through tears. "And you are the proof that kindness never dies." The vows they exchanged were not grand promises, just quiet truths spoken from the heart. "In sickness and in health," he said, his voice trembling, "I vow to cherish the life you gave me, and to make every heartbeat worthy of your gift." When she answered, "And I vow to remind you every day that love is the best medicine," there was not a dry eye left in the crowd. As they kissed, petals floated in the air, and the hospital staff cheered from every window. Later that night, they sat beneath the fairy lights strung across the rooftop, the city alive around them. Anna rested her head against his shoulder, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart. "Do you ever think about how strange it is?" she asked softly. "That part of me keeps you alive?" He smiled, placing his hand over his chest. "Then it is only fair that part of me belongs to you forever." She laughed quietly. "It already does." The next morning, the hospital held its first One Life More celebration, honoring both donors and recipients. Anna gave a short speech, her voice clear but full of emotion. "A year ago I believed the greatest gift was saving someone's life," she said. "Now I know the greatest gift is sharing it. Compassion is not about what we give, it is about who we become because of it." Her words echoed through the hall, and even Grant, standing in the crowd, felt his throat tighten. After the event, a young nurse approached Anna shyly, saying she had just signed up to be an organ donor because of her story. Anna smiled, tears welling up again, and hugged her. "That means everything," she whispered. As evening fell, she and Grant walked through the corridors hand in hand. The lights dimmed, and the soft beeping of monitors created a symphony of life around them. He stopped near the plaque once more, tracing the engraved letters with a tender smile. "You know," he said, "I used to think the world revolved around achievement, around power and control. But it turns out the world really revolves around moments like this." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "Around love," she said. He nodded. "Around love." Outside, the city glowed under 1,000 lights, and from the rooftop garden, laughter drifted into the night. The story of the nurse who gave her heart to healing, and the millionaire who learned to love through it, had come full circle not as legend, but as truth. Because in a world that often measures worth in wealth, their lives stood as proof that the richest thing a person can give is kindness, and the most powerful cure is love itself. And so, in that quiet place between heartbeats, they found their forever.